Welcome everyone to the Center for Communications fourth annual Women Plus Media Career Summit. We're happy to have you here with us for the next 3 days. I want to send a big thank you to our sponsors of this summit: Comcast, NBC Universal, Discovery, Disney, Hearst, McKinsey and Company, Nielsen, Viacom CBS, and the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. We couldn't have done it without your support, especially true in these challenging times. Later in the program, we will take questions from the audience. If you have a question for our speakers, please type it into the Q&A box. Someone from the team will message you if your question is selected, then invite you to turn on your camera so you can ask your question live. Please keep your questions short so that we can get to as many as possible, and one question per person. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Director of the Center for Communication, J. Max Robbins.
Thank you so much, Kate. To kick off our program today, and what's become kind of a tradition with our summits, it's my honor and pleasure to welcome my friend, Ann Del Castillo. As Commissioner of the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, Ann is truly an invaluable partner in the Center's mission of education, inclusion, and empowerment. A native New Yorker, Ann has more than 25 years of experience in film and TV production, public, media, arts, and nonprofit administration. She leads MOM's efforts to bolster the city's creative sectors in film, television, theater, music, advertising, publishing, and digital content creation. And if that weren't enough and doesn't beg the question, when does she sleep? Ann oversees the city's Herculean effort to cultivate a sustainable nighttime economy through the city's first ever Office of Nightlife. Now, it's my pleasure to turn it over to my pal, the commish. Take it away, Ann.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Max. And I want to thank you and the entire team at the Center for Communications for being able to continue this program, even in a virtual environment. It really is a pleasure to be here with all of you in what is turning out to be quite a year for women. We have our first female vice president, and they just announced that the communications team at the White House is going to be all women. Major League Baseball got its first general manager. It's a really great time to be a woman, really making a difference today. And I have to say, these kinds of developments are truly a bright spot in what has otherwise been and continues to be a very challenging year. As Max said, my agency oversees basically the creative economy of New York City. Film, television production, theater, music, advertising, publishing, nightlife. These industries generate prior to the pandemic, these industries generated over 150 billion in economic activity and 500,000 jobs for New Yorkers. And so I think it's, the jewels of New York City, we've seen them suffering in this time. When I took on the role of commissioner, I inherited a thriving portfolio of fantastic creative industries. And then in March, my role went from cheerleader to essentially crisis counselor, trying to help our truly incredible industries that have defined New York City as a global cultural and creative center through some very difficult times. Theater shut down, film production shut down, our nightlife and hospitality was shut down. And so we immediately began a campaign of reaching out to the industries that we support, doing calls, having meetings, emails, engaging as much as possible with the sectors to really understand what the needs were in that moment, and then sort of long term, because if many of you recall, we really did not know how long this was going to last. We sent out surveys, got feedback. Our overall goal was to understand the short-term and long-term needs, but also to make sure that these industries who probably really had never had to rely on government support in this way, or had been aware of government services, understood what was available to them. And so, we had a series of town calls with workers, businesses, freelancers, operators, to make sure that we could listen and also answer any questions they had about the available city, state, and federal resources. We worked really hard with our partners, and we continue to do in government at the city, state, and federal level to advocate for support for our industries, unemployment insurance for freelancers who make up a considerable part of the workforce in the sectors that we serve. Extending grant and loan programs to nonprofit cultural organizations was really feed and fuel the creative economy here in New York City. And then just making sure that we were in regular contact so that people understood what was going on, what was available. And so, that was primarily the focus 24/7 in the early days of the shutdown. And then as we started to see a phased reopening, our attention really turned to figuring out how we could best support these industries in reopening. The first certainly was in the dining and hospitality, starting with outdoor dining or takeout and delivery, first and foremost, outdoor dining, making sure that people understood how to behave in this new environment when they went out to pick up their food and not to gather, making sure that the restaurant owners understood how to operate their businesses. Film production was one of the earlier industries to come back. And we worked really hard with them to understand what were some of the protocols that they were thinking about. How were they going to land their productions? What did they need in order to get back to a full engagement of productions? We first started out with crews of 10, then 25, and then 50, and now we're at crews of 100, and that's on location on public property. But really just trying to create an environment where this very thriving sector could reopen safely. Prior to the shutdown, we had about 35 television series filming on the ground. I'm happy to report that we're at about that same level now. It's been a slow but safe, secure reopening for them. And then really trying to figure out how best to support our performing arts, our live performance groups, our theater groups, who are really hit hard. The whole point of those kinds of activities is to convene and to commune. And so what we've been doing is really trying to understand how we can open up spaces for them, how they can work within the existing framework and state guidelines. They can record. That we've been facilitating a lot of virtual performances, promoting a lot of the virtual performances to make sure that New Yorkers and the people who love to visit New York continue to stay connected to the incredible offerings that we have here in our city, the incredible arts, cultural, and entertainment offerings. So we launched Virtual NYC with our colleagues at NYC & Company and the Department of Cultural Affairs, where you can access a whole array of online programming. And then a few weeks ago, we also launched Off-Broadway in the Boroughs, where we had live pop-up performances throughout the city, again, as a way to sort of model what's possible, but also just to keep at the forefront of everyone's minds that theater is alive and well. Even though they've shut down, they haven't stopped working. They're continuing to create. They're continuing to innovate and figure out ways to bring wonderful performance experiences to their audience, whether they're online or on the street. And so in addition to that, in addition to sort of assisting folks with the programs that they can run now and helping them think about what reopening looks like and keeping them connected to the kinds of resources that are available, not just actually on the economic side, but also on the logistical side, making sure that they're aware of the health protocols, the changing protocols, travel restrictions, test and trace availability, encouraging people to go and get tested. We've also wanted to make sure that we're continuing to build workforce, to continue to build opportunities, access for New Yorkers to work in these industries. We anticipate a strong comeback, and we want to make sure that people are connected to those opportunities. And so we were able to fulfill our commitment to our Women's Fund grantees. We have a Women's Fund for media, music, and theater. Sorry, it's evolved. It started out as film and theater, and then we expanded it to include music. And so through that program, we've actually given $3.5 million in grants to 157 projects in film, music, theater, and digital since 2019. And in these months since making those grants, we've really been working hard with those women to help them realize, if not the original vision for the distribution of their work, other ways to connect with audiences, get their work out there, and showcase the work that's been done. We've also continued through our training programs, our workforce programs. Some of you may be very familiar with the Made in New York Production Assistance Training Program, where we've graduated over 900 New Yorkers to work in film and theater. Film production. We also have the post-production program, where we've trained New Yorkers in post-production skills. And we also have a theater workforce program that we do with Roundabout Theater. So we've continued to offer those programs and have been very pleased to see that they've been able to continue those trainings online. Then we've also continued to showcase educational programs to provide professional development opportunities for New Yorkers working in these fields. For example, next week we're hosting with Sesame Workshop, actually, a Made in New York talk called Writing for New York City Children's Media. It's a panel of leading writers, directors, and producers who will share their work experiences and thoughts on inclusion and career advice. For those of you that are interested, you can register on our website, www.nyc.gov/MOM, where you can also find out information about our training programs and other partnerships and programs that we have to support career development in media and entertainment. I think it's important to note, I love to point this out, particularly to when I'm speaking to groups of individuals who are looking to grow their careers. And maybe this is a new entry for you, or maybe you're just at the point where you're trying to figure out where to go in media from here. And I'd love to tell the story about how I never in a million years, if you had asked me when I was graduating college, would I be commissioner of media and entertainment for the largest global capital in the world, it would never have occurred to me. So I love to share my story so that you understand that my bio looks really intentional and logical, and like, oh, okay, I went to school and got a master's, a degree in communications and English, and then I got a law degree, and then I ended up working in media and entertainment. And that's totally not how it went. I went to school and I majored in English and mass comm because I liked doing it, and I thought it was interesting. And it was really just a serendipitous series of internships, relationships with people, that I ended up where I am. I was just open to experience of trying new things. I did an internship with a visual artist who pointed me into the world of film production. I helped a friend out with their film, and I ended up becoming script supervisor and then an associate producer. I worked in documentaries. And so it was really just being open to experiences and just trying out different roles and seeing what fit right. And time and again, what sort of propelled me forward was my relationships with people. And so I feel like it's important to mention that, because normally we'd be sitting in an auditorium together and I would say to you, turn to the person next to you. That could very well be your the person who hires you or your next boss. The reality is, whoever's watching this right now, whoever might have just graduated, you could very well be my boss in a few years, depending on where your journey takes you. And that is not nonsense. I will say to you that I was on a call when I first got this job at the city. I was on a conference call with a group of colleagues, and there was one of them on the call was the deputy director of intergovernmental external relations for the Department of Cultural Affairs, and his name was Brian Max. And I thought, God, that name sounds really familiar. I think he might have been an intern, but it can't be because he's the deputy director of the Department of Cultural Affairs. And lo and behold, when he introduced himself, he said, "And hello, Anne, this is Brian. I'm your old intern. I don't know if you remember me." And so I just, I think it's just very important for you to know that while you are listening to some incredible speakers, and you're about to hear from two incredible speakers once I stop talking, also pay attention in the opportunities where you're able to hear what other questions there are. You read in the chat and try to make connections with the other participants in this seminar, because you can really learn from each other just as much as you can learn from the people that you're about to hear from. I just want to applaud you all for being part of this summit. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. I think the fact that you're here speaks to the level of commitment and drive that you have to find new opportunities. And so I want to congratulate you all for being here. And now I want to introduce you to the next speakers, who are really incredible. I'm actually a big fangirl of the work that they do because I love food. Please join me in welcoming our speakers for this evening. It's chef, best-selling author, and television host Carla Hall, and Food Network president Courtney White, and they are here to talk to you about food media. Thank you very much.
I am so excited to talk to you today, and we talk all the time about work and specific projects, and I want to talk about the exciting shows that you have on Food Network right now, the projects that you have in the works for the future. But first I want to talk, when the commissioner was saying the intention of her path, I think of you and I think of food, but that wasn't always your whole life. So I would love to step back to start and talk about your journey and your path to food, because it wasn't where you started. So if you don't mind backing up, I'd love to hear your story of how you found that path.
I'd love to back up, and I really enjoyed listening to the commissioner, and because it's all about being open to experiences. The one thing that people may be able to see in terms of my personality was that I was very much interested in theater. I thought I was going to be an actress, but even backing up before that, I was a painfully shy child, and I saw my first play in 1974 on Broadway in New York. It was Bubbling Brown Sugar. My uncle was an extra or in the chorus, and I was mesmerized. And I went home reciting half of the play for the next month. And my mother said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to put you in theater." And that saved me. So from 12 to 17, I did theater. So I thought that that's what I was going to do. I wanted to go to Boston University. That isn't what happened. I ended up going to Howard University and majored in accounting. Talk about an abrupt change. And then I went on to work in accounting at one of the big 8 accounting firms at the time in Tampa, Florida. And I hated it. And my biggest fear was being 40 and hating my job. So I had done fashion shows when I was at Howard University. And so I met some people and they were modeling. And I said, "Oh, I think I'll do that. I've done this before." And I started doing that. And then when I just couldn't take the day-to-day anymore of accounting, I decided to quit and I moved to Paris. I had one telephone number, and talk about looking to your right, looking to your left, and all of the connections. I had one telephone number who was a friend 10 times removed to my mother. And I went there. I was there for about 2 years. And that's when I started cooking, just because of the Sunday suppers that a bunch of models would come together and have these meals. And I realized I didn't know how to cook. Everybody was talking about, oh, my mother does macaroni and cheese like this. Oh, my mother does macaroni and cheese. It was a bunch of Black models, from most of them from New Jersey and New York. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to make the food that my grandmother has been making every Sunday. So I started cooking, and the cooking became a way to thank the people who were allowing me to sleep on their couches. And so I came back. I also worked as I went to culinary school, by the way, at 30. And I came back, and I was the chef and director of a social club in Washington, D.C. And then I kept getting all of these jobs cooking. And then I did Top Chef. And I was 42 when I did Top Chef. Hooty hoo, everybody. I was 42. And then I did it again a couple of years later. And then I did, and then the Chew came because of that. And there were all of these serendipitous moments, and I am grateful for every single one. And my mantra is say yes, adventure follows, then growth. I don't say no to very many things.
And so as a shy child being on the stage and then, taking those risks, was it something about being on stage or being in front of an audience or something like that that felt different for you, or what was it that drew you to that world as somebody who was shy?
I think it was that I'm not being myself, I'm being a character. So I can step into this character and be whoever I want to be. And I think that was the biggest draw for me. It was playing. And I remember my sister, and I'm just remembering this now. I remember my sister and I would play this game called Dearie. We would dress up in my grandmother's clothes and walk around in her heels. Hey, Dearie. Hey, Dearie. And it was all of that. And I think I still enjoy, even though I'm all about being authentic, I still enjoy exploring characters.
And so when you're on a shoot now and you're filming a show, does it feel like stage? Do you get nervous the night before? Like, what is production feel like to you now?
I still get nervous. I get nervous because I'm a little bit of an overachiever, and I obsess over things feeling real. Especially when I'm doing a show and it's a competition show, and I just want to I want to be more of a mentor in my seat. And so I want to make sure that I say the right thing, that I give the right advice, that I give somebody information to walk away with that they can use in their life, because I was there as well. But I feel like if I'm not nervous, then I get really scared because I've taken something for granted. So I prepare, I read all of the bios, and then I don't know the crew. And I think that it's so important to come into a working situation where it's a team and we're doing this together. I may be one of the faces in front of the camera, but there's so many people behind the cameras who make it possible. So I always sort of tiptoe in, making sure that I understand how things are working, that I become a really great listener, just even in body language. So that's generally how I approach, but I'm still a little bit of that shy person. So I'm borderline introvert, extrovert. So that a lot of people see me, when they see me, of course, I'm an extrovert when I'm on television, but I still have to retreat to recharge. And only my friends, when they see me at home, do they see that side.
Well, you're known throughout all of my colleagues at the network as someone who is just such a pleasure to work with and such a great partner, and that you show so much respect for everybody on the team, the crews and everybody who's involved in production, which, behind the scenes is so many people. And speaking of crews and behind the scenes, 2020 has been such a challenging year. And you have been incredible in working on Halloween baking, holiday baking. And can you talk a little bit about that experience? Because, in speaking to students and people who are climbing through the ranks in media, it has been a challenging year, and there's been a lot of turns that none of us could have expected. But I also think it's been a year of real ingenuity, and we've had to problem solve together every step of the way. So can you tell us a little bit about production in 2020 and sort of any stories that you want to share about how that's gone? Because from my end, nothing has gone as planned, but we've made it through together.
Say, how are you doing it? I mean, being the president of a major network. So I'm going to boomerang that question back to you. But it has been, I've been on sets. I was getting ready to take Best Baker in America, and we were 30 minutes in, and they were like, we're shutting down the production. And so everybody went home. That was shocking to the system because you felt it was real. It was almost like hearing the dominoes. And then in August, when I got the call and saying, hey, we're going to shoot Halloween baking. And I didn't think I was going to. And so I had to choose between Best Baker in America and Halloween because they were going to be shooting them at the same time. And they shut everything down. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go home and rest. And then in August, I got the call to do Halloween because then I could actually do it because it was going to be done in LA. And so there are no mistakes in the universe. And then I ended up being the host, which was so much fun. John Henson couldn't do it, and I ended up being the host, which was amazing, and hopefully we'll see him next year.
You're so great, so much fun. I mean, your love of Halloween and the theatrics and all of that it was so much fun to watch.
So you can see the whole theater. That was the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to play, and it's theater and over the top, and I was like, yes, please. And I never get to do that as a judge. So I just felt like you all gave me a sandbox that I got to play in. And so when I went back for holiday, I literally went back home and they're like, oh, by the way, can you come back for holiday? I'm like, wait, the place I just left? And so I got to come back, see my husband. So it was a lot of back and forth and being sequestered. But in being on those sets and being sequestered and living together, it was so fantastic. And I think we got to know each other a lot better because we were living in a controlled environment, which made the show better, I think. When you look at the contestants and they were living together, you see all of that camaraderie. I mean, that was so special. And I think, and I'm hoping that there were things that happened on the set because of the pandemic that will move forward that you see, oh my gosh, that worked. And we would have never thought to do that. So Bakeaway Camp was done last year. Worst Cooks, I did Worst Cooks in America, which was incredible. They just announced that, I think a couple of weeks ago, last week. That was a lot of work. It was so great working with Ann Burrell. I mean, a lot of work. So I went from Best Baker, I'm like, oh yeah, I love mentoring, to Worst Cooks. I'm talking, I jumped into the fire. It was crazy. And I tell you why it was so, and I haven't even talked about this, I think, to a big audience. I had a little bit of, and I don't want to diminish and call it PTSD, but being on Top Chef was a lot. And so doing Worst Cooks, I felt like I was on Top Chef, but my teaching was was on display along with the cooks. So, right. So Ann and I are going against each other as instructors, and then you have these teams. And so that was a lot emotionally for me, and it was exhausting. It was exhausting emotionally and physically. It is a grind, but it is so rewarding. And I would leave there and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I would leave there and I would have to shoot something live for Amazon. So I was literally running from thing to thing to thing, and then getting up and doing it again and having like a 16-hour day. But the thing that I loved was everybody was getting up and doing it with me. The crew was there, and the crew, and I just can't say enough about all of the crews that I've worked with, because that is your support. And when you look and you think you can't take another step, you're like, oh, they're doing this with me. So all of those shows. And the other thing that I've been loving, you guys, I don't know if anybody has seen them, but Food Network Kitchen. So right now we're in my makeshift kitchen here at home, and just doing those lives on Tuesdays, it reminds me of, actually sometimes being with the Chew, because you have that immediate response from the audience and you know that you're cooking for them. And so many people have gotten so much better and they're surprising themselves because of the Food Network. So hats off to the Food Network. But
Well,
Courtney,
and those lives, some people love them and some people don't. Like, it's very, we found, some people are like, I'm in my plate, Valerie Bertinelli was like, I've wanted to do live, and, this is where I feel best. And some people feel more comfortable if, they can get a couple tries and they can stop tape. So it's been interesting to see the different reactions to live, but it feels like the people who have the bug, like they really have the bug, like Michael Simon.
he's so great. Michael Simon is so great live. I love live because if I mess up something, I'm going to fix it. And I think I will teach you more in something that I am correcting than something that is perfect. So I really don't want it to be perfect.
As a consumer, as a viewer, I love those moments because I'm like, okay, I can relate to that. It makes me less intimidated as I'm trying to follow you or learn from you. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Just yesterday I was doing perfect chocolate chip cookies, and I was talking about how I put my vanilla in the eggs, even though the recipe didn't say it. I said, because I will always leave it out. The bottle will be there, the cookies are in the oven. I'm like, oh no, the vanilla. And then I left out the melted butter, and like the melted butter, I'm like, oh, I have to add the melted butter. I'm like, okay, you'll put it in here, but this is what I'm doing. But that happens, and there is power in self-correction.
And one of my favorite moments, my little anecdotes from production in 2020, and to your point about hopefully some things, as hard as it's been this year, some things hopefully will stay. Reed Drummond, who has done hundreds of episodes of Pioneer Woman, during the pandemic, her kids have been filming the show, and they're, and it's always a beautiful show and a lot of perfect moments. But in this version, her daughter was filming. Ree had the pot in front of her. She had a wooden spoon in front of the pot, and she was just, going on explaining her dish. The spoon caught fire. We could see it in the audience because we were on this side of the pot, but Ree had no idea. She just kept going and going, then she smells something burning, but like after several seconds, and then moves the pot and sees the spoon, and she like tamps it out, and she's like, I can't believe I have a cooking show. I can't even cook without setting my tools on fire. And we kept it all in, and we got such a great response on social that people felt like that was real and authentic. And especially with the shutdown and people not being able to make those connections, being able to make those connections through their favorite chefs on Food Network was even more meaningful. So I think all that you do for not only the shows, but Food Network Kitchen and giving people that access and feeling like you're connecting with them in a deeper way, whether they're going to make those cookies or they're there just to be entertained and feel connected to you, I think it's just such a gift, especially now.
Well, thank you. And I think that we all need each other. I need that moment as much as the viewers are needing it. And I think more than anything, I have felt that the entertainment that I give and the families and the connections that we've made, I think it's made us a lot closer. I can't tell you how many people have said, I have been watching the Food Network and surprising myself with cooking, and it just takes time. But I mean, how are you all, or you specifically, reacting to the growth of Food Network and just this response during the pandemic?
So I think a couple things that we have learned, you know, Food Network has so many shows that have been favorites for so long, Chopped, for example. And so I think there's a steadiness to the network. And what we have learned this year is that we can still be steady. We can still be that place where everybody in the family, kids can watch together with parents, but that we can also be timely. So whether it was adapting on the fly to new production techniques, or making episodes of The Kitchen about cooking from your pantry, or doing Amy Schumer Learns to Cook, which was really a portrait of a couple in quarantine, we realized that we can be of the moment too, and that we can move fast and be nimble. And to your earlier point of, you're on Best Baker and then going to Halloween and we have had to make so many last minute changes. But what has really been our guiding principle through all of it is, first of all, keeping everybody safe and comfortable with production. And then really adapting on the fly. And I think as a team at the network with our production partners, we've all gotten closer because we've been on the phone together at 10 o'clock. We can't go in that location, or, that state has shut down production, and what do we do and where do we go next? So that I do think of my job first and foremost as problem solving. I mean, from, it's little decisions to big decisions, and so many. I mean, we produced 500 hours of content, and we just announced today Discovery, our parent company, we're launching Discovery Plus, our streaming service, in January, which is all of the Discovery brands together. And I can't wait for your new projects on that, which I want to talk about too. But that's a whole, in addition to Food Network Kitchen, the app, our network, our new streaming service. I think my big message to people who are coming up in the media industry is, you are just a content creator if you're in this world, and there are so many different distribution outlets, and more content is needed. So our team is handling more volume than ever and making more decisions really quickly. And I think it's about really being able to be with a team you trust, being vulnerable when you don't have the answer, and relying on other perspectives to help you through those, to really build a team that has differences among them, so that you're collecting different views and different opinions to help you guide the way, I think is more important than ever, for so many reasons. But I think that's been, we make a plan, we make the best plan, it never goes that way. And how do we then all get together and work through it?
Yeah, I think that, just talking about being nimble, and speaking of your production partners, I mean, one of the things that we talked about when I was making the decision to do the overall deal with Discovery and Food Network, and you were so open and honest, and I knew that you were a straight shooter. And I said, Courtney, okay, let's talk. I was like, okay, Courtney, I'm from Tennessee, but East Tennessee is very different from Middle Tennessee. I'm Black. You're not. A lot of Food Network isn't. So, what is that going to look like? And we had that real conversation, because that was really a concern of mine. And I wanted to make sure that I was joining a network that could also see my point of view as a Black woman, a cook, and just culturally. And you had outlined some of the things that you all were doing at Food Network and reaching out to production companies of color. And then when I got a call, unprompted by you, from a couple of those companies, and I was like, oh, and I didn't talk to them. And they were like, oh yeah, Food Network reached out to us. And the first thing I did, I sent you a text and I said, you are a woman of your word. And it has been fantastic just talking to these production companies and thinking, about particular content to broaden what is actually seen on the Food Network.
So as we look ahead at Food Network, because that is, as you raise, such a key mission for us, and the killing of George Floyd really did shine a brighter spotlight for us on what we need to do to move forward. And we are, as I mentioned before, we are on several platforms. We're creating more content than ever. So our responsibility to be more inclusive, to be truly representative of the wide swath of audience that we are seeking to speak to, has never been more important. So, and what I respect so much about you and our partnership is you're not only incredible on television, an incredible chef, but you're also truly a creator and a strategist. And I'm so thrilled that you signed that deal and we have this long-term working relationship and everything that we can do together. But what do you, as you think of the next year or two down the line, where do you see needing to have more of a voice? And if you could green light your own projects, what do you want to see first and foremost?
I think there's so much culturally that is in the country, just from the perspective of African Americans, that I would like to see. That there's so much culture around and food in our churches. There's so much culture that you don't see in our neighborhoods and in music and dance and how it relates to food and what happens at the table, but with those things without them being a caricature. Because I think that sometimes when you see a lot of these projects, and if the people who are the leaders in the production company, if they aren't from that community, then what you see is their version of what they think is coming out of our neighborhood, and it comes across a little inauthentic, but a little caricaturish. So I would like to see more authentic shows in that way. And I think that I would green light. Oh God, there's so many things in my head. I tell you, there's so there's so many things in my head. I'm editing because I'm like, I've talked about that. I've talked about that. I've talked about that. So I'm editing because they aren't real yet. But a lot of them are shows of even like food stylists and other people who are in the food world that we don't see. And when you talk about, like at the Chew, I always wanted to do a show, a day in the life of, and I wanted to do the set designer, the florist, like all of the editing, all of these different people, because they make a show, and it's so interesting to me, and I want to see that. But I think that there are a couple of those ideas that I think would be really, really interesting to see some of these people, like food stylists. Why don't we see more of them, like in a show?
I don't know, but they're magicians. So what they do is incredible.
Right. So I have, we'll be talking later because I have an idea about that. But yeah, so those are some of the things that I would like to see. And but it brings us to Foodways, which is the show that started all of this whole my relationship with Disney Plus and the Food Network. And it is about tracing back a dish, starting with a dish in a restaurant and tracing the lineage of that dish back to its origin of this country. And you will find yourself in a very surprising place. But it was a way to give people credit for their contributions of a particular dish. And I think that it was all about, I see you. I see you and I see your contributions, and it's not yours, it's not mine, it's ours. And it's ours because of how we live together, and you can't help but to create and borrow, and it's a kumbaya, it's truly a kumbaya moment.
That's amazing. So that'll be out on Discovery Plus next year.
Yes.
And one of the things we're super excited as we embark on Discovery Plus, we don't have to hit a certain clock. You know, if it's 35 minutes, if it's 45 minutes. So creatively, I think it's going to be so much fun to work together on that, because it's a different ball game working on streaming than the network. So I think for all of us on the team, the creative juices are flowing, which is so exciting.
I know, but speaking of that, I mean that the times are changing. How do you see television changing? Because you have all of these streaming outlets. You have, like you said, you have all of these different silos going on, and I guess we're calling it television in the aggregate. But how do you see it changing?
I do think it's going to be more of an on-demand world. But I also see, you know, and I came up through the business working at HGTV. And, you know, 15 years ago on HGTV, when I was there, if you wanted to do home content, there weren't that many choices. You know, everything would come to HGTV, and we were the biggest megaphone. But, you know, you have people who can launch Instagram, you have people who can do videos. I think it allows for a more niche outlets for people who are passionate or really knowledgeable. So I think while there still will be the behemoths of Amazon Prime and Disney, and hopefully Discovery Plus is in there too, but I also think that you're going to be able to see much smaller, authentic videos that are self-made. You know, I have young kids who are now obsessed with TikTok, and they're creating their own content. And so I do think that you're going to be able to tap into these, you know, as somebody who comes from lifestyle media, you're going to be able to tap in really more easily to these smaller niche groups, and that video will be entertainment information of any length. And I just don't think there'll be rules about how long a show needs to be. And I think that's really freeing. And at the end of the day, I think all of it will feel and be more authentic, because I think the trajectory is to become even closer and closer to the creator, where it's something that's really from their point of view. And I am seeing a message that we're ready for Q&A, and I know there are a lot of students with a lot of smart questions, so we can
Let's do it.
open to them. Great talking to you, Carla.
Likewise. Thank you, Courtney.
Hi,
Hi,
my name is
Veronica.
Veronica. So my question is, I liked how you went from one career into something that you were really passionate about. So I was wondering, when you were starting off or anywhere in between your career, did you ever have moments where you doubted yourself and your ability to continue to push through your goals and ambitions? And how did you overcome it, or are you still overcoming it?
Oh, Veronica, that is that's such a good question. Let me count the ways. I have to tell you, so I sold water filters. I had a lunch delivery service. I honestly worked every single day for 5 years, from when I came back from Europe when I was modeling until I decided to go to culinary school. I started a lunch delivery service, and I was living like one sale to the next. It was incredibly hard, and I said that, you know, I built a house in my soul. I talk about building character and not knowing where my next thing was coming from. So it was really tough. And I remember being in the shower one day and just feeling completely overwhelmed, and borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, all of that. And I just broke down and I started crying, and I was just like, what? I mean, and it was all of this. I mean, I have a degree, I have all of these things, but I chose not to use it, and I'm doing this, and I'm in the shower and I'm crying. So yes, one foot in front of the other. You meet somebody, you carry on, and you're like, I am going to accept this being uncomfortable, and then you're going to go on to the next step, and realize that it's a process. And I think that was the thing that made me realize that it was a process. And so that's why today I can be my authentic self, knowing that I went through all of those things to grow. So thank you for that question.
Oh.
So it's a process.
Thank you for answering.
I have a crazy background. I hope you guys like grass.
I like it. I love grass.
My name is Purple Lee, and I go to American University in Washington, D.C. So go Howard, go D.C., yes. My question for you guys is, I think you guys talked a lot about how today, being people who want to enter media, we're our own production houses. And at the tip of our fingertips, we can create videos through other platforms. And so it's no longer a, let me wait until I get into this job necessarily so I can get access to create this creative idea I have. It's like right here, right now. So what is your advice for people in media for the day-to-day? What skills should we be building? What should we be doing on a daily basis to really excel in our media careers? That's my question.
Thank you, Herbert. Courtney, do you want to start with this one?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's great to do both. I think it's great to create your own content, to really pour yourself into that, to develop your point of view, your voice. But I would do it in tandem with working in as many broad jobs as you can, to see various crafts that have been honed by people over the years. And you'll never know what kind of clicks for you. Like Carla was saying, like stepping up on stage. For me, it was seeing cooking shows as a kid. I just became obsessed with the Frugal Gourmet, and it kind of went from there. But I think any maker of any content, the broader your skills are, from lighting to scripting to editing, is just going to make you better in your own work. And I've never walked onto a set or set foot into a project where I wasn't completely amazed and blown away by the talent and the skill of people there. And I never failed to learn something. So even though it's very easy technically to produce your own content, and you should, and the way that you say something in your voice is going to be completely unique, you're only going to be better served by also at the same time getting exposure to any number of crafts in media. And I would say, I think it used to be more siloed, where you're a filmmaker or you did video or you did digital, and now those worlds are colliding. So I would say through internships or any job on any project that really gives you exposure, you're going to learn more about your own voice and what you want to do, for good or for bad, by being with other people. And you're going to find what really sparks to you, and also what you don't like. And you're like, I know I don't want to spend my time doing that. So it's just gonna hone your own skill set, your own perspective, and make your path clearer.
I agree. I can't really add anything.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you. And Carla, by the way, your glasses are always so fabulous. And I just wanted to say they're awesome always.
Thanks, girl. See you in the hood.
Hi, my name is Sherdell Baker, and I am currently a sophomore journalism major attending the illustrious Hampton University. Yes, go HBCUs. My question for you, Ms. Hall, is how do you feel as though your HBCU prepared you for the life path that you're currently on now?
So my niece and my nephew went to Hampton, go Hampton. I think it gave me a sense of self and pride. I remember my first class, and I was coming from Nashville, so there's something about coming to a university where you see yourself and you see others around you that are like, and there is power in that. And so when I go into a room, I have the confidence that I am okay and I am enough with who I am. And I think going to an HBCU gave me that 100%. I also, the network of friends that I've had from Howard that I continue to reach out and grow those networks, invaluable. Invaluable. And actually the commissioner talked about those relationships. I mean, of course we have all different kinds of relationships, but also the certain experiences that I had that may have been unique to me as an African American woman. And I would call my friends, I'm like, have you had these experiences? And we can talk through those things. The history, like just African history, Black history, so that I can feel very proud of who I am and like know why I should feel proud. I got that at Howard University.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question.
Hello, my
Hi,
name is
Mia.
Mia. I am a senior at Fordham University. Thank you guys for doing this talk. I'm a big fan of Food Network. My question for both of you is, what is one piece of advice you wish you could give your college-age self?
Courtney, you go first. I'm a little older, so I'm going to try to reach back and think. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I got a piece of advice. So there's two pieces of advice that I think were really formative for me. The first was very early in my career. I think it may have even been my first job out of college. And I was working on a weekly news magazine show, and I was a PA, and a producer told me, you know, if you are the first one in and the last one to leave, you'll be amazed at what that does for your career, because people are just going to make assumptions about your commitment, your work ethic, your investment in the job. And it's hard to drag yourself out of bed and, you know, just work those hours. But if you can do it, it does, people immediately give you more responsibility because they feel like, okay, they're going to get the job done. The other came later in my career, and this is one that I would definitely, I definitely wish I had realized earlier. I had really plateaued in my career. I was in the same job at the same level for 8 years. I was seeing people being promoted all around me, and I couldn't figure out what they had that I didn't. And I went to see Lauren Zalaznick speak, and at the time she was the head of Bravo, and Bravo was like my end-all be-all favorite network. And I don't know if you had any experience with Lauren, Carla, but I just went to that audience and she said, instead of waiting, if you're in a job and you want that next job, instead of waiting for that opportunity and throw your hat in the ring, be in the ring wearing the hat. And what I realized is I was in meetings and I was like, oh, when I'm that level, I'm going to do this. Oh, when I'm at this level, I'm going to do this. And it was like I was waiting for somebody to come from a magic wand and like give me that title so I could act like that. And so after that speech of Lauren, you know, I started being more outspoken. I started, you know, taking on the responsibility. I started sticking my neck out with my opinions in a way that I felt at the time I needed that bigger title to give me that justification for that point of view. When I knew what I was talking about, I'd been in that job for 8 years. So eventually that unstuck me, and then I was able to move up after that. But it was a real mind shift for me that I really thank her for.
Yeah, I think for me, well, this advice was from my grandmother, and she said, "It is your job to be happy, not to be rich." And for me, that it was always about me feeling like I'm fulfilling. I mean, I don't even want to call it destiny, but just moving in a direction that satisfies me, but not in a selfish way, but just in a way that I am truly happy. Because if I'm truly happy, the people around me, we're all going to be happy. The other thing, I think in college, I would tell myself to be present, because I think that I was always so scared of messing up. Just I would just I would be immobilized. I would be so scared of messing up that I really don't think you can mess up. You can't make a bad decision. You shouldn't know what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because it is the time to you have to find out what you don't want to do. And a lot of times people don't want to find out what they don't want to do because they're afraid to make a move. So I think that I probably would have done a lot of different things. I did exactly what everyone expected me to do up until 2 years out of college. And then that's when I said, let me live my life. But I would have given myself a little more rope to play.
Hi. My name is Lauren, and I'm a senior at the University of Texas at Austin. I wanted to ask, for people who are close to graduation, like me, I guess, and don't really have an established network of people, how would you, I guess, advise going about trying to connect to other people and finding new experiences, like amidst COVID? And also, like, how would someone be able to stand out if they don't necessarily have any connections like that?
I would say there's a couple of things. I think that what I anticipate is post-vaccine, or as soon as the majority of the population is vaccinated, we're going to see a whole flood of opportunities. I do think it's particularly challenging now in this short term, but I think we're honestly a few months away from the doors blowing off and there just being a flood of opportunity. So I would say companies like Discovery, we have a job postings on our website, and it seems like, oh, that's a rote thing, but companies legally, any opportunities for within big corporations, legally they have to post it. So it is just a surefire way for you to know every job that's opening up, because it needs to be posted there. So Amazon, Prime, Discovery, any of those, I would go every couple days onto the website to see what's of interest. I would also take whatever you're watching, whatever content you love the most, watch the credits, find out what the production company is, go on their website and write them about your experience, but then write what is it about their show that made you obsessed with it? What was your consumer reaction to it? Because even if you don't have the connections, I think when I'm looking at people who are interested in coming to Food Network, somebody who is passionate about Food Network above anything else really stands up. I don't care if they don't have any skills. If they have that passion, I know they're going to be hungry to work, hungry to learn, and that they're going to just have a joy that they feel when they're creating the content that is going to translate, like Carla said, to whoever the viewer is. So I would say go after the makers of your absolute favorite shows and tell those people why. Lindsay Whitehorn, who years ago at HGTV, she applied for an entry-level job from college. She hadn't studied film. I can't remember what her degree was in, but it was something completely unrelated. But she wrote us a letter about what it was like to sit on the couch with her mom every weekend and watch HGTV, with detail. I mean, she was the ultimate fan, and she came in, she ended up being responsible for launching Fixer Upper, and just grew. But that passion can get you so far, I think even farther than connections.
I love that, Courtney. And interestingly enough, so the woman, Kristen Hardkey, who works with me, and she's my social media content producer and culinary producer, she called me after I was on a panel, and she comes up to me and she says, this was like 5 years ago. She comes up to me and she says, I was looking at your website. I'm like, oh my God, it is a mess. It is such a mess. And she goes, oh, okay, well, I think I can help you with that. And I said, okay. I said, give me your number and I'll call you later. So she goes home and tells her husband, I met Carla Hall, and she's going to call me. And he's like, did you get her number? And she's like, no, I did. He's like, yeah, right. So she's going to call. So that night, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot to call her. I called her at 9 p.m. and I said, let's talk. And she started working with me. And it was that passion and that connection that we had. And she started work with me on little things, little jobs, helping me with my website. 5 years later, she is a fixture with my company. And it's just about relationships.
It really is, like that video at the start of the student who loved the Daily Show, spoke to the producer, got the internship. That's how it works. You know, this is a passion industry. So being able to communicate that, I think, is such a skill. Carla, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure and so much fun to be with you tonight. And I'm going to welcome back Kate Stanley to close us out. But
likewise, thank you, Courtney.
All right. Thank you so much, Carla and Courtney. That was a great discussion. And thanks so much for sharing your stories and such wonderful closing advice on networking.